Hi folks, it's Florida Man here, bringing you that Florida Man cheer. Today I'm delivering you a conversation between me and Owl about roughly how many fleets each country should have. Please enjoy, I know you needed this in your life.
Okay, well, I guess we can get started with England.
Mm-hmm.
So for England, I think maximum, 8 fleets maximum. Like, definitely no more than 8 fleets. And I'll try to explain why. So for example, so the purpose of fleets is to put them in sea centers. Like, for example, you don't want a fleet in Kiel, you want an army in Kiel. So for example, let's say we have 8 fleets. So you can have, a fleet in the North Sea, a fleet in the Baltic Sea, a fleet in the Channel, a fleet in the MA, and then, 4 more fleets and that can just go through the Mediterranean. You don't need any more than that.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that number is pretty good. And how would you say the number of fleets England should have is affected by different alliances that England might be considering?
I think it's quite affected. So I think if you ally with Germany or Russia, you can build maybe 7. I think 7 is actually better than 8. I don't think you usually need 8. So one reason for the fleets is putting up sort of a stalemate line in Tunisia. It's not really very hard to do. So for example, if you have a fleet in Tunisia, one in the Western Med, and one in the Gulf, you can pretty much hold Tunisia with just those 3 fleets. But if somebody's it's very unlikely, but if somebody gets an army in Tuscany, which happened in one of my fleet in Tuscany, which happened in one of my games, so then you need a fleet in Spain to just to provide that support. But you rarely need that much.
Yeah,
But
usually Southern wars that actually get locked into naval combat, it uses a really surprisingly small number of fleets.
yeah, so I think with Germany or Russia as your ally, I think 7 fleets is usually a good amount, and no more than that, and the rest armies. But if you're allying with France early, I think it's quite a bit different. So the thing is, if you're allying with France early, you're going to be going after Germany and then probably Russia afterwards. So in this case, I think you need to have fewer fleets because you need to have a lot of armies to hold centers like Moscow and Warsaw.
That's what I thought. That makes a lot of sense to me. So in that case, I guess you need maybe fleets for North Sea, Norwegian Sea, Barents Sea, and maybe Baltic.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't need more than 5 fleets total.
I agree. So I think in the beginning, so you need about 4 fleets, so you can convoy those armies deep into the continent. But then the thing is, though, later, I've seen in the archives some English players they soloed with this strategy with 6 fleets, but I personally I managed to solo once with France as my early ally with 5 fleets in the end. Because in the beginning you just need those 4 fleets to get your armies there. But then the thing is once you have a lot of armies on the continent in Moscow and Warsaw, you don't really need to convoy many more armies that far away anymore. So I think you can have your fleets go after France at that point.
That does make sense to me. If you're allied with France and you get a solo, I imagine that those last centers are going to end up coming from France. So
yeah. Also, I think this might not be completely related to our topic, but I think I mentioned before that I think it's a bit harder for England to stab France in the end than Germany or Russia.
I think you had said that, yes.
The thing is, I think if France is a strong player, it's difficult to solo with that. But I don't think the French player necessarily needs to be a bad player. If France is an average player, I think you can have a good chance of soloing allying with France. Because the average player doesn't really cover themselves very much.
No, I think you're right. The average player will leave all sorts of openings.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting. Something I realized, I feel like a lot of Germany players, they seem more worried about a stab from England, whereas the French players, they don't seem to really worry about that.
I can see that, and I kind of understand it because I think if you're Germany and your ally is England, I feel like you might feel like there are more points of vulnerability. Because usually if you're Germany and you're allied with England, you have centers in France that maybe England could attack, and maybe you have Holland and or Belgium that England could try and take from you, and maybe you have a Scandinavian center or two that England could attack. In addition to the fact that England could move through Helgoland Bight and start trying to attack your home centers. Whereas at France, I think the points of vulnerability to naval warfare are fewer. So it's real. England needs to go through the Channel and or the North Sea to attack France. France isn't going to have Scandinavia, so that's not a point of vulnerability. England's probably not going to get into the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. It'll be really difficult to sneak in anyway to the Mid-Atlantic Ocean.
I have some advice for that. So the thing is, like, so you have those four fleets, right? You have those, the fleet in the, North Sea, Baltic, Norwegian Sea, and Barents Sea. So what you can do, though, I mean, a lot of times, like, if the French player has gotten all of their fleets and armies, very far into the east, so you can move, Norwegian Sea into North Atlantic, North Sea into the Channel, and then you can just make a supported attack on the Mid-Atlantic.
That does sound like a good start for sure. Once you control the Mid-Atlantic, I feel like that's a big stride toward conquering France.
Yeah, and that's also possible because I remember, like, sometimes I think I suggested before, like, maybe leaving a fleet in Spain, for example. So some French players do that, but that's not actually enough to, to defend against a supported attack on the Mid-Atlantic.
No, that's true.
So even if they do leave one unit there, that might not be enough. But a lot of time they don't want to leave more than that.
Yeah, this is really the difficulty, I think, of France working with England long term, because it will both make you look suspicious and slow you down in your conquests, that you have to leave some units nearer to home in order to defend against this possibility of attack.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of wondering. I mean, I'm wondering if it's actually that the thing is, I mean, if they're very strong players, I think it's likely going to end in a draw with maybe Turkey or something. But because I have this thought. I think because we've talked about this idea of dividing the North into this and the South. So for example, if England, they've got Moscow and Warsaw, let's see, so that puts them at 12 centers, and it's not. So the thing is, so normally the deal I make with France, I get Holland, Northern Germany, and Scandinavia. So it's pretty easy for England to grab Belgium from France at that point. It's not hard to take Belgium from them. So the thing is, I kind of think, if you've got Belgium, that puts you at 13 centers, and you're over the stalemate line, you probably have a pretty good chance of winning.
I think you have a good point. I think, an Anglo-French alliance definitely is to England's advantage in terms of which power is most likely to come out on top of that. If either is likely to do so.
Yeah, it is. So I think it's I think it's at least a little bit easier for England to stab Germany. But on the other hand, though, it's also, Germany is also able to stab England, whereas France really can't do that later on.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Germany might have some northern fleets.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's pretty difficult. I think it would be pretty difficult for France to stab England in the middle part if England is paying attention at all.
Yeah. I guess one thing I think about, like, in some games I've played as France, Germany wasn't communicative or something, but the English player for some reason doesn't have any problem with me just, like, having a fleet hovering in the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. But like when I'm an English player, like, so if you want to ally with France, it's not real. It's reasonable, but you just need to point out, you just need to ask, can you not have fleets hovering in the Mid-Atlantic? Because sometimes I've actually, if Germany wasn't communicative, I've been able to sort of to ally with England in the beginning, but before they get into all of Scandinavia or something, where we start going after Germany. I just have a fleet hovering in the Mid-Atlantic, and then maybe, I have one in Spain, and then I can just, I can just get those, so there's one in the Irish Sea, there's one in the Mid-Atlantic, and then I can just, have an army in Gascony that can just convoy in there.
Yep.
So, so France can actually consider, like, if Germany's just totally uncommunicative or something, you can consider allying with England in the early game, and then still having time to go after them. But I think they should, be nervous about that.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I think, like any alliance can work if you plan it really carefully and you play it really well. But yeah, France has to be careful working with England.
Yeah. So I think this is what I said before. So I think for France, it's easier to stab England in the early game, but for Germany, it's easier for them to stab England in the late game. So I think some England players, they feel like, oh, Germany's the best ally because it's much harder for them to stab me than France. That's not really true, though.
Yeah, I think for England, it's definitely better to work with France if they have that choice, at least most of the time. Because yeah, I think Germany is likely to have explosive growth at a certain point, and at that point, Germany's likely to have an opportunity to build two fleets in one season. Then England's going to be fighting to hold on to whatever Scandinavian centers and the North Sea that England has.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, yeah, so that's for England. So I think for England, as I said, so if you're allied with Germany or Russia, I think 7 is probably best, but if there's somebody really going at you with the Mediterranean or something, maybe an 8th fleet would be okay, but definitely no more than 8 fleets.
And if you're allied with France, then fewer fleets.
Yeah, I managed to pull it off with 5 fleets. I'd say 6 maximum if you're allied with France, because you need a lot of those armies to, hold on to Moscow and Warsaw.
Yes. And how many fleets do you think France should have?
I think France can really build a lot of fleets. I mean, lots of fleets. I definitely think France should always have more fleets than armies.
I think I do agree because France is positioned so that if you look at it relative to the rest of the map, France has more sea spaces next to it than any other country, basically, except for, well, maybe even including England, if you consider Iberia as part of France. France has Gulf of Lyon, Western Mediterranean, Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and English Channel next to it. So
Yeah,
just as many as England, really, and possibly, arguably, North Sea, in which
yeah,
case France has exactly as much business having fleets as England does.
I agree. I mean, also, I guess also kind of depends on whether France wants to go after Italy later. Um, I mean, the thing is, France really only needs enough armies to take Munich and hold it. So maybe 5 armies, 6 armies. Maybe 6 or 7 armies is really all France needs because they can hold Munich with about 5 armies, and then maybe have something in like Piedmont to defend themselves from Italy or something.
Hmm.
I think. I think France can. I think 8 or 9 fleets could be perfectly fine for France.
Yeah,
I mean,
wow. So as many as or more than England's number.
yeah, that sounds strange, but because the thing is, England. Yeah, because that might sound strange, but it's true because they can defend themselves, in Iberia with fleets. So they really only need enough armies to take Munich and hold it, and then maybe some armies just in case they need to defend from attack from Italy.
Yes.
Like a lot of their, because Scandinavia, you can take that with fleets.
Oh yeah.
Yes, maybe 7 armies, and then it might sound strange, but maybe 7, maybe 8 armies, but then the rest you can probably just go with fleets with France. It is strange. I think in some ways they might actually have to build more fleets than England.
I don't think it sounds too strange because England is in a corner, and so it's far enough away from other powers that it could reach via its fleets that sometimes it might actually be more efficient just to convoy and go through Germany.
Yeah,
Whereas France is located in a more central location, so it might be more effective to build Fleet Marseille and then move to Gulf of Lyon, and then it can reach just as many places with its fleets as it can with armies. And
yes, true.
there's not much point in convoying anywhere except for Italy. There's not much point for France in convoying to the English island unless they're fighting over the English island. There's not
Yeah,
much point in convoying to Scandinavia
yeah.
unless
I
it's
mean,
just an army in St. Pete.
yeah. I really think the only convoy France is really going to have to make is convoying onto the English islands if they're attacking England. I guess they could convoy to Italy, but I don't. I think that rarely happens. It's not always necessary.
I think you're right because Italy can be captured with just fleets. It doesn't really make your attack much weaker. And also, if you need to move armies, you can move them through Piedmont.
Yeah, I do think an army helps in attacking Italy though, because I think attacking. I think it's better. You can attack Italy with just fleets, but having at least one army there would be helpful.
I agree. To make Venice insecure at the point when Italy still has Venice there to defend Rome.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, I think in some games though, I've actually made a mistake by trying to go after the Italian home centers because you don't actually need those to win.
Hmm.
You're probably going to need to get Tunisia,
Yes.
but like there was one game I was playing a while ago. Like there was this really strong Italian-Austrian alliance, and Turkey was a bit foolish. I mean, he just decided to attack Russia, even though it was clear Lepanto was going after him.
Hmm.
So Turkey got destroyed pretty quickly, and then I tried to go after Italy later, but they were able to just stalemate me because they had so many fleets. But the thing is, if I was leaving Italy alone, maybe they would have gotten in a fight with Austria afterwards, since I'm leaving them alone, which makes sense. So I'm just saying. I mean, you don't really have to like if you take the Italian home centers. Obviously, that makes it much easier for you to solo. But I think people should just pay attention. Like if it looks like Turkey's going to fall pretty quickly, though, maybe just don't do that because you don't actually need it. You can come back for Tunisia later. Okay, so next I guess we could talk about Italy's how many fleets Italy needs. Um, so personally, I think like here's the thing. Sometimes what I see happen, I sometimes see games where Italy, just like builds tons of fleets and breaks through into the north, just going through Iberia and up into the Atlantic, and
Yes.
then for some reason the Austria player just or Turkish player just leaves them alone while they're doing this.
Yeah. I will say that that seems like kind of a long shot to me as well.
Yeah, I mean I've seen it happen though, but I think the Austrian player was foolish to just let them do this. But
I think so.
um, yeah, but so I think most of the time though, if Italy wants to solo, they're going to have to take most of the centers in the south.
I agree. And if you're taking centers in the south, you mostly need armies.
Yes, exactly. So this is something I think about. So I think a lot of people don't realize this. I mean, Italy is a land power. Like, let's say you want to solo as Italy, for example. Okay, so you're probably going to need all 17 centers in the south, which includes Moscow and Warsaw. And then for your last center, you can take either Munich or Marseille. So if your last center is Munich, that makes it more important. So like you can pretty much do that with almost entirely armies. You need some fleets to defend yourself, obviously,
Yes.
but I think Italy should have more armies than fleets.
I think you are probably right. I'm
Yeah,
definitely I've definitely been in some games as Italy where I was thinking, why did I build these fleets? And
yeah,
how am I
because
going to break through in where I am right now in Austria or Turkey?
exactly because in most of the games as Italy, you're going to need to take centers as far away as like Moscow or Warsaw to solo.
Hmm.
So you really need those armies.
Yes, and when when Italy does have armies, has armies say in Trieste, Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria. When Italy looks like that, it's very formidable. It's um, it's the kind of force that you can see could sweep up and actually snatch the solo away and easily take out all of Russia.
Yeah, you're right.
Uh,
So I mean, in the only game I soloed as Italy, I finished with 4 fleets.
hmm. I have at least one game that I've soloed as Italy. Let me take a look at that really quick and see what I can say from my own experience. This is kind of funny. I would expect to have a lot more fleets than I do. It's not four. It's six, but two of them are frankly not as useful as they could be because one of them is in Armenia and one is in the Black Sea.
I see. I mean, the Black Sea is probably good, but Armenia, that's a land zone. You don't really need that there.
Yeah, I just put those there because they're fleets and I couldn't turn them into armies,
I
and
see.
I was just using them to support my unit in Sevastopol.
I see. Okay, so maybe 4 or 5 fleets would be best for Italy in that case.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that wow, that's surprisingly fewer than I would have expected because it's fewer than England and it's fewer than France. But I guess that's the nature of them being northern powers and Italy being a southern power. Even
Yeah,
though people popularly consider Italy to be a naval power, and maybe that's because Italy needs fleets earlier on than a lot of other countries do.
yeah.
Which brings me, because now we're getting to the North versus South dichotomy, brings me into Germany. What kind of fleet army allocation should Germany have, considering that Germany, like France and England, is a northern power? But
Hmm.
I think it feels like more of a land power than either of those two.
It is. I mean, it's a bit strange, I guess, because all of Germany's centers are in the north. But so early on, I think they should mostly build armies. It's a bit strange, actually. Like, you think they're a northern power, so they should build more fleets, but I actually think they should keep fleets a bit to a minimum.
I feel that way too, because I I see I see Germany as being a central power, really.
Yeah,
It can be attacked, but the only way you can take Munich, which is its most valuable center, the center that everybody's always trying to fight for, the center that's usually center number 18, the
yeah,
only way you can take that is by moving over land. You cannot attack it with fleets, you can't support an attack on it with fleets. So even though Kiel and Berlin are both centers that can be reached with fleets, Munich can't, and Munich is going to be probably in a lot of cases closer to the front line than Kiel or Berlin for Germany.
yeah. I think maybe by endgame 4 fleets would be enough for Germany. Like maybe they can have 2 in the early game, and then maybe later they can find a way to double fleet build somehow.
Hmm. And do you think that that's going to be likely to be enough to overcome England, though? I mean, because at some point, Germany is presumably going after England and or France with these fleets.
I think in one of the games I saw with you, I think you built 6 fleets as Germany. Um,
Oh. Did I win that
you
game?
did win that. So, but I've managed to solo as Germany with 4 fleets before. I mean, I think you just need to get into the North Sea though, and then convoy an army there. So if England is kind of out of position, for example.
I'm looking at past games that I've been in, and I saw one. I wasn't Germany, but I saw one where Germany soloed, and he only had 4 fleets. So that's very possible for sure. And I'm thinking that that you've got it right. You need 4 or 5 fleets as Germany, because one thing that I think we can say for Germany that we couldn't say for England or France, Germany's probably not going to get Tunis.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a huge part of it because if you want to take and hold Tunis, you have to leave like 3 or 4 fleets there, mostly 3.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like Germany's not really going into the Mediterranean that much.
No, no. I mean, at most, if Germany was very successful, Germany might have wound up controlling Iberia. That's an amazing, that's an amazing situation for Germany that Germany got that far somehow. But I think, as I said, I'm looking at these previous games, and I don't see Germany needing to travel that far to win. I see Germany winning with most of the French centers and some Russian centers and all of the English centers, variations like that. And
How many?
maybe if Germany was doing really well on land, then he has Vienna or Budapest or both.
I see. How many fleets does Germany usually have when they manage to take Iberia? Still 4, maybe?
I think so. I think it's just Germany just really just needs 4. It's surprising, but that is what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, so maybe 4 or 5 for Germany.
Yeah, yeah. So similar to Italy, really.
Yeah, because they're both central powers.
All right, and now what about the third central power, Austria? How many
Um,
fleets should Austria have?
I don't know. I mean, I actually think it might not hurt Austria to build about 3 fleets later. I think that's all they need, really.
I was thinking Austria is very sort of fleet handicapped relative to
That's
other.
true. The thing is, Austria also doesn't always need to take Tunisia depending on what centers they get. Like if they manage to take, all of Russia and Turkey's as well as, Berlin and Munich,
Yeah,
they just need the Italian home centers.
I do see that I have at least one solo as Austria where I had 2 fleets, um, which is funny. On the other hand, I see another game where the Austrian player got Tunis and soloed, and in that game, I see that he had 3 fleets.
Yeah, let me take a look at some of my games as well. I've sold Austria quite a few times, actually.
Yeah, Austria is definitely one of my stronger countries, and it's
Yeah.
kind of surprising to think of because Austria has the stereotype of getting taken out early. I see another game where Austria soloed and had 5 fleets, so maybe this is a little more flexible.
Okay, so I'm taking a look at mine now. So there was one game as Austria. I soloed with 4 fleets. I think that was an exception though. So there's one where I soloed with 4 fleets, but I think most of the other ones I didn't have that. Let me check the other ones.
This is kind of fun. I see a game where Austria, who was not me, but Austria in this game did something crazy and ended up with Iberia, France, Belgium, and Berlin. Um, and Austria in that game had 5 fleets.
Wow.
But That in that game, Austria was partnered with Russia, and
I see.
Russia and Austria together basically conquered the entire world except for the English island.
Oh, so it was like a juggernaut with Russia, with Austria being the navy.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
um, it kind of it looks kind of cool to be honest, but
Yeah.
I don't think that circumstance is likely to repeat very often. Um, so just like an exception, it's just an exception to the rule. Just like when Italy, if Italy's battle plan is to send a bunch of stuff north, then it needs more fleets. But otherwise, the normal number of fleets, about four, is good for Italy. And for Austria, I think you're correct that three or maybe four maximum is probably good for Austria.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at another game I sold with 2 fleets. I mean, I'm just looking at all these now. So I had one with 4 fleets, one with 2 fleets. Let me see. Let me see.
Let's see. This in Diplo War, the very first game I ever did a video after action report for, I soloed as Austria, and I had three fleets.
Yep.
So
Um, yeah,
uh,
I have another one with 2 fleets. Um, Let me see. 2 fleets. Another one with 4 fleets. So
okay, so we're hearing a lot of two, three, and four fleets for Austria. So
yeah, and another one I soloed with 3.
probably three most of the time then, and occasionally Austria might need to break out a fourth fleet. But I even see a game where Austria took Iberia where he only had three fleets.
Yeah.
I don't really get that, but the game's title was Debacle 4,
Wow.
which I think was a very appropriate title. That is a kind of a debacle, uh, but Austria did really well there with his three fleets.
Yeah. Okay, so I think for Austria somewhere between 2 to 4, but
Yeah,
4 maximum.
yeah, and probably three more often than four.
Yeah, I agree.
That's incredible. Austria, I always think of it as a power that doesn't even have the opportunity to build fleets, because usually that would make Italy, who's a natural ally for much of the game with Austria, the early game at least, it would make Italy really anxious. Um, so I am surprised to think of so many games where Austria got three or four even, because I think two is probably more common, or one is probably more common for Austria to get to, even though it might be more desirable to get to three or four, as these results are showing.
Yeah. So I guess that covers it for Austria. So next we can talk about Turkey.
Yes, because Russia is going to be a little more complicated.
Yeah. So I think similar to Italy, Turkey is a land power. They need fleets early to defend themselves, but they got to have those armies because they've got to take Moscow, Warsaw, the Austrian centers, maybe Munich.
Yeah, Turkey's going to get busy. Turkey's got a lot to do. Turkey is going to have to travel a long way to get that solo.
Yeah. So personally, I think the best number for Turkey is about 5 fleets.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me see. Yeah, let's see. I see a game where I had a two-way, and Turkey had six fleets. But I think I wished I had another army in that game, so
Yeah.
it would have been a two-way.
I think Turkey should only really build a 6th fleet if they feel like they're able to take all of Iberia, like Portugal, because if they're able to take Portugal, they'll need that additional fleet to defend it. But I think you should only go for 6 fleets if you're really confident you can just grab all of Iberia, which if you can, though, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I see a game in which Turkey soloed and ended up with Portugal and got into Liverpool too. And in that game, Turkey also had six fleets.
Yeah. So sometimes I guess 6 fleets. I think no more than 6 fleets though. 6 fleets is the maximum.
Yes, I
Like
think you're right.
yeah, if you're able to take Iberia and get into Liverpool with that, that's probably all you need.
I agree.
In most of my games as Turkey, I usually just take all of the centers in the east and then just get one of Marseille or Spain.
I've actually seen a lot of games where Turkey solos seems like and gets has exactly six fleets. It's surprising.
I guess so. Usually I've always sold with 5 fleets though.
Huh. I also had one game where I soloed as Turkey with 7 fleets, but I really probably should have had more armies because I didn't actually get Iberia or Marseille. I got Tunis and all of Italy and Munich and Warsaw and Moscow.
Oh, I see. Did the people not know about stalemate lines in that game?
I think they came to the stalemate line too late, or they were having trouble fighting together. It was the Western powers against me at the end, so I have to figure that there was some infighting or something that stopped them.
Yeah, that often happens. I think I told you about that game. Where England was saying, Germany screwed me. Now it's now blaming for their impending loss. Let the bloodbath begin.
as happens sometimes.
I really think Turkey, of all countries, is the country that benefits most from other countries infighting.
Yeah, because it's in the corner and it usually didn't have the chance to do too much bad stuff to anybody earlier on.
Yeah. Okay. So then I guess we can go to Russia. So I noticed a lot of Russian players. I think I noticed a lot of the times when they solo, they have a very strong northern fleet.
Hmm.
Like I think they should have like maybe 4 or 5 northern fleets.
I think you're right that's good for Russia because like when Russia solos, I think more often than not Russia has more of Scandinavia than Russia would get from just the beginning of the game. Let's see. In this game, Russia soloed. Russia had 4 northern fleets and 2 southern. This game, Russia soloed, and Russia had again 4 northern fleets and 2 southern. Um, let's see if I find another game where Russia soloed. Russia had 5 northern fleets and 1 southern. So a lot of the time, I'm seeing that Russia is doing really well in the north, and that's the key to the solo. And when that happens, it needs 4 or 5 northern fleets.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at some of my games also. I soloed in one Russian game with 4 fleets in the north.
Yes.
Uh,
Um,
Here's another one. Yep,
and
4 fleets in both of them.
even in games where I stabbed Turkey for the win, I didn't have more than 1 or 2 southern fleets. I don't think. I'm
Yes,
sure I can. Sorry.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm sure I can find some game where the Russian player soloed, and I know I have an example in my basics of Russia videos of a game where Russia soloed and grabbed Tunis. So in that game, I'm sure Russia had additional southern fleets. So I don't want to say that you only have 1 or 2 southern fleets as Russia, because sometimes there are opportunities to expand into the Med. But I don't think that's the norm. I think normally, as Russia, you want to be slowly, steadily building northern fleets. And, if you're lucky in the south, then you might need 3. If you have lots of opportunities in the south as opposed to the north, then you might need 3, as much as 3 southern fleets tops. Because you're not going to win a naval war against Turkey. You're going to, or not Turkey, against France. You're just trying to grab the last few centers you need to solo if you're using southern fleets for a whole lot. And even though there are absolutely games where Russia successfully grabbed Italian and or Tunisia as centers, I really only have found one game where Russia soloed with more than 3 fleets in the south. And I don't think that Russia actually needed that 4th fleet. I think that was just a questionable decision on my part.
Yeah, I see. Well, I think it's usually because I think fleets are less effective in the south than in the north.
Yes, that's a good point. That's probably the source of that difference. So Russia needs 4 or 5 fleets in the north and 2 or at most 3 fleets in the south.
I've usually, I mean, in both, I mean, I'm not sure if they need 2 fleets in the south. In my Russian solo games, I only had 1 fleet in the south.
Well, the second one might help you stab Turkey more effectively. But
Actually, I usually don't build a second fleet to stab Turkey. I just like to get into the Black Sea and then just support an army into Armenia from there.
hmm.
I've usually been able to do it without 2 fleets.
Well, I know that works. I know that does work.
I think I actually told you about that game. I was allied with England before, so I did the opening that we talked about. So I just had the fleet in Romania, and I said to Turkey, "Hey Turkey, hey," and then I built an army in Sev. I just say, "Hey Turkey, hey, is it okay if I move into the Black Sea so I can get my army in Sev into Romania?" So I did that, and then I actually did move the army into Romania, but then I got a build, and my fleet was so then I told him after I told him so it was spring. So I said, okay, I'm going to move my fleet to Black Sea in the spring, move the army into Romania, and in the fall, move it back to Sevastopol. But so I did move to Romania, but the fleet didn't move back to Sevastopol. And then, I get a build. I build another army in Sevastopol, and then, now it's in Armenia.
Well, that's effective. I think you're right that you don't actually need an additional southern fleet. I think it can help though sometimes.
I agree.
Um,
I
but hmm,
the thing is, if you have a fleet in the Black Sea, you don't really need a second fleet already. Like, you just need to get the fleet. I mean, sometimes, like, I think maybe you could use, like, you might need a second southern fleet to get into the Black Sea. But that's really the only purpose I would see for that. Because if you're already in the Black Sea, I don't think you need a second fleet.
that is a very good point. I mean, it is a very unusual game where Russia gets to do more. Sometimes Russia, though, will be allowed to. Sometimes Russia will be allowed by Turkey to slip its fleet through Constantinople, and in those games, you're probably going to end up wanting a second southern fleet. I will say it's rare that a third or a fourth fleet in the south would be useful.
Yeah.
But I think for Russia, probably 4 or 5 fleets in the north and 1 or maybe 2 fleets in the south is what we're landing on. Yes.
I agree. Yes, so I think those are the fleet builds for every country.
Yes. Well done. I think that will help some people who might be might be trying to figure out how to think about how many fleets they should have.
Yeah, I agree. It was great talking with you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It was good having someone to spitball this with and go over our various shared experiences. And I know my audience enjoyed having you again.
Great.
Hope you liked this, folks. If you did, you know how you can show your support. Likes, comments, shares. Until next time, Florida Man out.